today's episode, we're talking about the 4B movement, or lack thereof, in South Korea. That's all coming up right now. What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Right on Korea. I am your host, Pooch, and maybe if you watched the last or listened to the last episode, you may have remembered that I wanted to make a episode on new jeans, which was still something that I had planned to do. However, after Trump won the U.S. election last week, that's just about last week now, some people online in the U.S. started talking about the 4B movement, and subsequently I started getting messages from friends asking, hey, you got to cover this. What's going on? What is the 4B movement? And as these messages were rolling in, it just honestly, it just really started bothering me. Because there's no 4B movement in Korea. There's no movement. 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 I can't say it enough. So let's talk about it. I pulled up a couple of articles here. I want to go through some of these articles, and we'll talk about some of the issues, and we'll talk about what this 4B movement is and the reality of the situation at play. And it's like, if you guys in the U.S., if you want to have whatever your own kind of pledge or movement or whatever, y'all go ahead and do that yourselves. Don't try to copy some fringe thing that happened online in South Korea and pull us into it. We don't need to be brought into it. Donald Trump was not elected in South Korea. That was in the U.S. Don't bring us into it. Don't bring the spotlight to us. People here, normal people in Korea, have no idea. They may have heard of the 4B movement once, but this is just an overall trend of Western media going ahead, and they want sensational news articles from around the world to push their own agenda. So they'll go ahead. They've heard things that happened in South Korea, whether or not they're mainstream or not, and they'll go ahead and they'll write pieces. Or more than that, there are Korean, I don't know if they're Korean Americans or if they're Koreans who are fluent in English, journalists, that they're part of, or they have the same ideology of these groups and stories. So in order to get some steam into their movement or ideology, or to get support from the West, they'll go ahead and they'll write stories in Western media organizations such as The Guardian or CNN. They'll eat this up all day. A couple of years ago, I had a video responding to CNN about a male, I don't even want to say feminist group, and we'll get into that a little bit in a second, but essentially a group that hates men. Their icon is, I think the video, the title is like, "Don't do this in South Korea," which is essentially despite how much I hate the term hate, it was a hate symbol towards Korean men, mocking their stereotypical, I should might add, genitalia. And that CNN article, instead of attacking the anti-male group for that symbol, they twisted it and then started attacking men anyway. So we'll get into more details as we move through this video. So if you type in 4B into Google, you're going to come up, it's going to come up with the 4B movement, of course. Google's little side explanation is 4B, or 4 No's, is a radical feminist movement that emerged in South Korea during the mid to late 2010s on Twitter, X, formerly Twitter. It was Twitter back then, and on the website WOMAD. The name refers to its defining 4 tenets, which all start with the Korean language term B, roughly meaning no. That actually is taken from Wikipedia, so we're going to jump into the Wikipedia article about that right now. And let's see, I should just note that Korean is an Asian language that has its roots in Chinese. So there's kind of, even though it's one giant language, there's actually two different languages built in. It's kind of like the actual Korean language, and then the language that stems from its Chinese roots, meaning that there's kind of two separate languages in one. One is more common for casual speaking, and the other one is more common when writing or formally speaking, like the news. And so there are a couple words in Korean that mean no. Don't think about the English no of just a response saying like, oh no, I don't want that, or no marriage or no sex or whatever, which is part of the 4Bs. But these stem from Chinese characters, and one of them, the other one's me, I believe. But B is just roughly, it means no. And so the B's are related to no dating, that's B 연애, no getting married, B 결혼, no having sex, B seksu, which is obviously funny, and no or having children with men, giving birth is 출산, so B 출산. Of course, it says in the U.S., interest in the 4B increased after the re-election of Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. In South Korea, a portion of members, particularly those associated with WOMAD, were described as transphobic and homophobic. So actually, I'm really appreciating the Wikipedia entry here, because a lot of the time when the West will talk, when feminists in Korea try to describe the situation, they say, oh, feminism is such a bad term. You can't consider yourself a feminist. Men will hate you, and it's this disgusting term. And that's actually because the feminism in Korea is a little bit different than the feminism in the U.S. Not so much different, and I don't really want to go into the whole feminist movement in the U.S. I particularly don't like the word feminism. You can't tell me that a group or ideology that wants equality has only one side of the group in it. So we have a word in English for equality, and that's egalitarianism. And I think most people believe in that. A small fraction of people are still very hateful, and I think the same is true in Korea. So the idea that the word for equality only has one side of one group in it should raise some eyebrows. However, the Korean feminist movement, the true feminist movement in the U.S. now, it should also include LGBT. It should accept the gender identity argument that if you identify as a woman, you are a woman, or at least if you get the surgery, you are transgender, you are a woman. I guess J.K. Rowling is kind of against that. However, in Korea, no, it's their LBG, I guess when they say homophobic, it's probably including to the LGBT, which is including to transgenderism. But yeah, they're not acceptant of transgenderism. They also create these groups organizations that want to hurt men. Megalion, they created, the logo is to mock. And WOMAD, I think it was a member from WOMAD. She went to Australia to live or do a work and holiday, and she sexually molested a young Australian boy in order to extract revenge. Like that's insane and absurd and absolutely horrible and disgusting. But that's just to give you an idea of the fringe group in Korea that believes in feminism. Again, most people in Korea, I go out on a hunch and say most people in Korea want equality between the genders, and equality already exists. And dare I say that Korean society might be a little bit unfair towards Korean men. but we might have to save that for another video. So the 4 core tenets of the 4B movement: no sex with men, no giving birth, no dating men, no marriage with men. We talked about that. Since 2005, the feminist activist group Union Network has promoted Bihon as a political agenda to challenge the centrality of the heteronormative family model of marriage in Korea. Okay, I guess they were just against marriage in general. They sought to replace Mihon, not married, with a more neutral term like Bihon, which means single. So it seems like roots of this had existed since around 2005. However, it didn't really get popular until Twitter. The Wikipedia page goes on and talks about the birth rate in Korea, talking about the fertility rate of just 0.7 as of 2023. Having the world's lowest fertility rate, the South Korean government has adopted pro-natalist policies aimed at incentivizing an increase in childbirth, such as stipends for new parents, blah, blah, blah. This is just the birth rate in general, and this is not a birth rate episode, so we'll move on. Women of the 4B movement additionally refuse romance and sexual relations just because they see it as an extension of the patriarchal family structure. So this word will be used and thrown around a lot. Patriarchy and patriarchal family structure. These words will be thrown around a lot. However, no one really goes in and illustrates what examples they have. They just use, it's just a buzzword to throw around, and people, oh yeah, I know about the patriarchy. That's a bad thing, right? Or that exists. That's really holding women down here in Korea. There's no real explanation. History: the term 4B emerged from Korean feminist circles on Twitter around 2017 to 2018 after a highly publicized 2016 murder of a woman by a man. So the murderer, who said he did it because a woman had ignored him, was not charged with a hate crime. So this happened in Gangnam in 2016, shortly after I moved to Korea. Essentially, a schizophrenic man waited for a woman in a female bathroom, and when someone came in, he killed her, which is obviously disgusting and deplorable, and that person should be charged with crimes. However, he's schizophrenic, so he was mentally insane, which is why it wasn't charged as a hate crime. Also, in Korea, a lot of the times that a boyfriend kills his girlfriend, or a not boyfriend necessarily, like a guy that likes a girl, but the girl doesn't like him back because he's a weirdo and a creep, ends up killing her, they'll try to mark that as femicide. And I personally don't believe that that is a hate crime. I think that is somebody, because let's remove the genders for a second, right? Somebody liked somebody else, and that person didn't like them back. So then that person killed that person, right? So if the person who liked the person was gay and the guy that he liked didn't like him back, he would be upset and murder him. So if we remove the sexuality from it, it really doesn't have anything to do with gender. It has to do with sexuality. And because the majority of people are heterosexual, that's why it's men killing women. So I don't, it's not, it would be like if I wanted to kill someone to steal their Rolex watch, and I went around looking for somebody that had a Rolex, and I killed them because they had a Rolex. That isn't a hate crime against rich people. That's because I wanted something that they had. So I targeted them particularly and killed them. So I don't think that's necessarily a hate crime. But anyway, that was a huge thing that kind of kicked off the Me Too movement in Korea. The 4B movement was also a reaction to social media content, including a misogynistic social media platform, Ilbe Storehouse, which grew in prominence in 2014. It doesn't really go into what specifically the Storehouse was, but you can think of Ilbe as a 4chan equivalent. The first 4B groups articulated their principles on the Korean feminist wiki site FemiWiki, where they originally defined 4B as the motto of radical feminism, which means, whatever, we already know what the 4Bs are. The 4B movement gained broader recognition on Twitter in 2019 and through various feminist social media accounts. One notable feature of the 4B movement, as other Korean digital feminist movements, is that members often identify themselves as anonymous women. Okay, whatever. The page goes into like this escape the corset movement as well, which also happened in 2016. It's also a load of bollocks, as they say in the UK. The movement calls for women to liberate themselves from sexual, social, bodily, and from physiological oppression. How does it do that? Well, it just says you should stop trying to be pretty. Stop wearing makeup, stop wearing nice clothes, and start looking like shit when you go out. And this thing always kind of bugged me when people say, "Oh, the beauty standards in Korea are so high," and it's like, what is it? What does that actually mean? If you think about it, like, what does it mean? The beauty standards are high. Does that mean that a council of men drafted what women should look like, and if women don't aspire to look like that, then women will be arrested, or women will be put in the center of town to have tomatoes thrown at them in the old day, or like ridiculed, or what? Like there's no like, what are beauty standards? There's no one saying like, hey, people need to look like this, and if they don't look like this, we're going to attack them. In reality, what it is Korea is a extremely competitive country in every regard, and women are competing against other women to look pretty. And if you look hot, men are going to look at you and give you attention. And if you don't look hot, nobody's going to pay attention to you. So the way I interpret this is they want to look like shit, and then no one's going to look at them because they look like shit, and then they're going to complain about it. And that look at, like, what about me? That's like, if I went outside, I'm a bit of a fatty. That's if I went out and I saw someone with a man with a muscular body who's cut, good looking, like, hey, why are you working out so hard? You're attributing to the beauty standards for men, and because you look so good, a fat slob like me has to actually put an effort to look good in order to get attention, and that's not fair. These are, you are giving in to their demands. No, it's, I have a choice. If I want to look good, if I want to go ahead, go to the gym, lose weight, if I want to focus on, fashion and look better, then that's up to me. And if I don't, and I don't get attention from women, that's nobody's fault but my own. And you can even argue, and this would probably be a very controversial take, a lot of these beauty standards that apparently men have for women, these things can all be overcome through either working out or makeup, fashion, or surgery, plastic surgery. Whereas, like, the things that women find attractive in men, like, which is not just the physical aspects, but being tall, which there's no cure for that, and women ridicule men for being short all the time, which is a beauty standard, that can't be changed. The other thing can be, how much money somebody makes. I guess you have to work hard and hustle. However, considering that Korea isn't really a meritocracy, that's a topic for a future episode as well. it's not very easy to increase your wealth. So essentially, Korean men also have a lot of strict standards by women that are arguably even harder to meet because they can't just be purchased. But regardless, that's that. I think that kind of wraps it up for the Wikipedia article. Then there's all these other articles. This one mentioned the patriarchy again. Where's the one I wanted to go to that mentioned the patriarchy? The demographic. This is a article by the Security Distillery website. This talked about the 4B movement back in May of 2023. The demographic crisis the country is experiencing for over a decade has been widely attributed to the economic precarity experienced by most young South Koreans. The staggering cost of living and child rearing discourages many from getting married or starting a family. There we go. Stop right there. That is the answer for the birth rate. Of course, we can dig into that. It's not the cost of living. In reality, it's in Korea. It's cultural to buy a house, and the price of houses in Seoul have skyrocketed, both in combination to the entire country wanting to move to Seoul and because of some laws enacted by the Democratic Party in Korea. That's why the housing prices, so because the housing prices are so expensive, people don't want to buy, or people not don't want to, but it's very difficult for them to buy. Therefore, they feel like they can't get married. And also the education, we talked about that in a previous episode. Essentially, education is free. However, because Korea is so competitive and relies on old school test taking to determine one's ability in life, in order to be competitive on the most important test in somebody's life, the Suneung, which actually just happened yesterday here in Korea, they have to spend a whole bunch of extra money on private education, extracurricular education that would cost an arm and a leg. And essentially, if they don't think they're giving their child the best possible opportunity or chance to either maintain the same social status or improve their social status, they'd rather end their bloodline. That's the main issue at play here. But of course, the article goes ahead and says, moreover, over half the women of reproductive age in the country express no interest of having children due to the increased difficulties and pressures placed upon them in Korea's deeply patriarchal society and sexist job market. What does that what about Korea's deeply patriarchal society are they referring to? They don't explain. What sexism in the job market are they referring to? They don't explain. This is just somebody that's never visited Korea, that doesn't speak Korean, they don't know anything about Korean culture. They read online that there's sexism in Korea, so then they go ahead and they use that in their own writing to try to push their own agenda. Let's move on to The Guardian. This article is written by my boy, Raphael Rashid, fan of the show. No, he's a radical leftist here in Korea, and he blocked me on X, and I don't really like him for pushing the leftist ideologies here in Korea because he's not Korean. But anyway, this article is written by him in The Guardian. He was a bit fair, I should say. As Donald Trump secured victory in the U.S. presidential election, an unexpected phenomenon began trending on social media. Young American women declaring their commitment to 4B. And I appreciate him for doing this, but he says a fringe South Korean feminist movement advocating the rejection of marriage, childbirth, dating, and sex. So thank you for using the word fringe, Rashid. I am not a fan of yours. I wish you would leave Korea, but I do appreciate that because so many times whenever there's a movement on the male side, such as, men go their own way, for example, that gets portrayed in the media as sexist, disgusting. The word incel gets thrown around a lot. Nobody listens to what issues they have, or their complaints, or maybe they have a good point. Nobody listens to that. It immediately gets trampled on in the media. However, whenever there's an equal, I don't even want to say equally radical, because I think men go their own way is not necessarily a radical movement. I think it's relatively fair. But whenever there's something on the other side, such as the 4B, don't put your effort in trying to find a good man, or, don't get married unless you find a good man and you actually like him to start a family. It's just an absolute rejection of these things. So this is, as Raphael Rashid said, this is a fringe movement. But then you have the media going on and saying, oh my goodness, this is so brave. They are standing up for justice. We need to do this all over the world. Women need to unite. It's completely unfair how one side is celebrated for their whatever radical, fringe, rash decision making, while the other side, which is sometimes fair and logical, gets absolutely trampled on. Anyway, continuing on. The movement has sparked intense global interest, with millions of views on TikTok and viral X posts, heralding it as a women's rights revolution. Exactly, women's rights revolution, without explaining how women's rights are being infringed on. Yet within South Korea itself, the picture is more complex. In some places, the feminist movement is under attack. I would say in all places, because again, most people want equality and they would consider themselves egalitarian, and people that specifically consider themselves feminist kind of already raising eyebrows. Like if you said LBGT ally, like what does that mean? Like, do you need to identify yourself as an LBGT ally if you support gay marriage? Can't you just say, yes, I do support gay marriage? Adding this title LGBT ally, it kind of implies something else, that there is some sort of like other radical quality about your belief system. Somebody increased that I've never heard of 4B until recently, an office worker in Seoul who was surprised at all the international attention. This is a female, Iminji. I understand where all the anger comes from. Doesn't elaborate, but fine, we'll give that to her. I understand where all the anger comes from, but I don't think avoiding all relationships with men is the solution. Very reasonable. Pak Soyeon, another female, a publishing professor in Seoul, says she does not date because she is prioritizing her professional life. A questionable move, in my opinion, but I'll save my opinions for my personal life and not this show. Like me, most of my female friends are more focused on their careers than dating right now, but that's not because of 4B. It's just the reality of being a young professional in Korea, aka trying to hustle. This goes into the background of what 4B means. 4B represents rejection of heterosexual relationships as a means of resisting patriarchal structures. Again, no definition of what that means or exactly what the goal is. The movement emerged in the mid-2010s amid growing online feminist activism in South Korea, a country where women face the widest gender pay gap among OECD nations and persistent discrimination. No examples of the discrimination, and the gender pay gap is also a myth. And if you think there's a gender pay gap in the US, we're just not going to agree on this. But essentially, the gender pay gap myth has been debunked. Essentially, it's taking the average of all male and all female jobs, and it doesn't account for things such as women not wanting to spend the excruciating hours working at an executive on average. Not all, some women want to do that, but executives mostly being men because they they want to deal with the 80 to 100 plus hours per week, and they're okay sacrificing their personal relationships. I don't really need to go into it. There are hundreds of videos in English explaining why the pay gap exists in the US, and for those same reasons the pay gap exists in Korea, except because Korea used to be an extremely poor country until not that long ago, and because Korea actually was sexist. No one's denying that. Korea was a very sexist country 20 years ago, even 15 to 20 years ago. That has changed radically. When something changes in Korea, it actually changes. So when I first visited Korea in 2010, you can smoke on any street. You can smoke in some restaurants. You can smoke in every bar and restaurant. And then in 2015, I think it was 2015, they just said, you know what? We want to reduce the amount of smokers in Korea. So they increased the cigarette tax 50%. So the price of cigarettes went from about $2 to $4, which is still actually quite cheap. However, still a 50% increase, and they banned people from smoking on all major roads, and the entire smoking culture in Korea changed a lot. Now, does Korea still have a lot of smokers? You bet they do, but the culture has changed as a whole, and now smoking is viewed as something that is not great. It went from being very normal to not great. And that's just an example of how fast Korea can change. And Korea has changed that quickly when it came to sexism. So, again, no real examples, gender pay gap in the US. Like, if you get a job at Samsung, male or female, you're going to get paid the same amount of money. If you get a job at any company, regardless, if you have the same exact experience, male or female, you're going to get the exact same pay. And I'm pretty sure it's illegal to get paid differently just based on your gender, and the company's going to get sued. So this is just a myth. Several high-profile incidents have galvanized the feminist activism. 2016 murder in Gangnam, we talked about that already. Digital sex crimes have further fueled the feminist movement, from widespread illegal filming to AI deepfake porn. I have a theory on this. I don't think that illegal filming is necessarily worse in Korea than it is in other countries like the US. I just think that it's in the news much more often because Korea is an incredibly safe country. And the U.S. is an incredibly dangerous country. So the typical things that appear in the news in the U.S. are about murders. And because there are not that many murders here in Korea, it's just, company corruption, weather, scams, and these hidden cameras. I think that's just because Korea is so safe that it takes up there's more about it in the news than it is in other countries, but in other countries there's not it's quite similar. Same with deep fakes. I mean, every country in the world is having major issues with deep fake pornography. He goes into the beauty standards. We already talked about that. Feminism has virtually become a slur, connotation, blah blah blah. President Yoon Suk-yeol, who took office in 2022, partly rode to victory on anti-feminist sentiment. Anti-feminist meaning not saying that there is sexism towards women and society is quite equal. So if you say, no, there's not a lot of discrimination against women, or women face discrimination, but also men face a similar amount of discrimination, if you consider that anti-feminist, then yes, there was an anti-feminist sentiment. However, if you consider that just a statement, then that's what he's talking about. Structural gender discrimination, again, not discussed in detail at all, and promising to abolish the country's gender equality ministry, which again, when the ministry was created, there was a lot of sexism in Korea that could be tackled, I guess, by that ministry. Two, a lot of the things that the ministry does can be transferred to another part of the government, such as if anything related to crimes, it can be transferred to the police. And three, the ministry is controversial not because it's called the gender ministry, the gender equality ministry. In Korea, the ministry is called the Ministry of Women and Family. So in a kind of brilliant marketing move, they've translated that to the gender equality ministry. But in Korean, it's 여성 가족부, or women family ministry. That I think that's kind of, and then he finishes off by the impact is hard to measure. So that's that. We're almost done here, so just bear with me a little bit longer if you've gotten this far. Shortcut to feminism, how an assault. Oh, this was as I was going through a rabbit hole. I found out this case that happened at the end of last year. A lot of the times Western media, and by Western media I mean these kind of like feminists in Korea that are fluent in English and are employed by these organizations, The Guardian, AP News. Again, they'll use their position, they'll use their job to kind of like push forward their ideals, as I talked about. So essentially what happened was a bipolar guy was drunk and went crazy in a convenience store, and he started knocking over shelves. And then when the worker there, a 20-year-old girl, intervened and tried to stop him, then he started attacking her. And while attacking her, he's like, oh, you're a feminist, you have short hair. And during the attack, a 50-year-old man tried to help, and then he also got attacked by the drunk guy. So here you have a case of a crazy guy who shouldn't have been drinking, goes on a rampage in a store, and the employee tries to stop him, and then she gets attacked, and then a guy tries to intervene and he gets attacked as well. This is, yeah, maybe you can say it's a hate crime because he said, oh, I know you're a feminist, but it sounds like the reason why he started attacking her is because she tried to intervene in his rampage, just like the reason he started attacking the 50-year-old guy is because that guy also tried to intervene in the rampage. And then this got labeled a, hate crime, misogyny. Maybe it was, but in this article here, I researched all the Korean articles, and they pretty much said like, hey, this guy went crazy and she tried to stop him and then got attacked, and then he called her a feminist. This article just says, this aspiring South Korean writer, On Ji-gu, never considered herself a feminist, but changed her mind after being physically assaulted by a man for having short hair. So it says she was assaulted for having short hair. I know you're a feminist, her attacker yelled as he beat her at the convenience store where she worked part-time. She doesn't note in this article that the guy was going on a rampage before he even acknowledged her. Now, actually at a convenience store about 30 seconds away from my house, an elderly woman went in there and randomly started picking up things and throwing them at the convenience store worker, who is a middle-aged woman. That's just, that's just a crime. That's just, oh yeah, she's crazy, whatever, she's schizophrenic, whatever happened, she was hearing things, so she just attacked her. That's just a normal crime. But when it just happens that the genders are opposite, then all of a sudden it's a hate crime. And this is kind of what is fueling the gender discrimination in Korea even more. The last thing I wanted to touch upon here, this is from X on the Korean Men Archives page. Despite its name, it's not run by men, it's a feminist group online. Those who claim that the 4B movement in Korea does not exist. Oh, she's talking about me. Presumably she is talking about me. include the following: individuals pretending to be Korean women. Okay, that's not me. Spreading videos on TikTok and Instagram. These people downplay the 4B movement by claiming it's a hoax, creating videos that disparage the movement. Some individuals whose identities cannot be confirmed as Korean pretend to be Korean women while undermining the 4B movement. Certain influencers portray themselves as Korean by listening to K-pop or making kimbap. I don't know if that's all it takes to trick people into thinking that you're Korean. Then I don't know how many Korean people actually make kimbap themselves. But okay. Then posting videos mocking women from other countries, ultimately leading to comments that criticize Korean women. This influencer later admitted that they are of a different origin country, a non-Korean. While everyone has the freedom to express their opinions, it is wrong to use Korean women as a shield and hide behind their identity to deflect criticism. Who are these people claiming that the 4B movement is fake, and what is their true purpose? The influence and impact of 4B movement has already been statistically proven. So apparently this woman, they don't expose the TikToker, but essentially the TikToker is saying, so the 4B movement in Korea is a very small fraction of the whole Korean population in general. Very true. It's just like the Western media that like to highlight that part. Very true. And to make it seem like it's the biggest issue in Korea. Oh, this person is actually rational and knows what they're talking about. I can promise you that. Don't believe all these sensational articles written online all the time. Very true. Most people in Korea still like the other sex. Very true. We want to date. Very true. And it's only the small group of extreme radical misandrists. Very true. And extreme radical misogynists. Exactly. Like, whoa. This person is speaking facts. And I think this can be said for like the racism in the U.S. or, misogyny or like the men go their own way in the U.S. or the feminists. Like, these are radical groups that are getting a platform and their true reach is being amplified by media that just wants clicks. So this TikToker is doing a great job. However, the comments are positive. They're like, yeah. And apparently this Korean feminist is getting angry by saying, well, don't belittle us, like we're having an effect. And then she uses a chart saying that apparently the gender of users on Tinder in Korea are 96.6% men and 3.4% female. And I don't know why that statistic is there. And then later it says that the birth rate in 2015 was 1.24, which is when the B4 movement started. And in 2019, it was 0.92, and now it's 0.72. I guess showing that, because B2 started back then, or B2. What? 4B started back then, and the birth rate is going down. Therefore, it must be because of 4B. So correlation does not equal causation. Sorry. And it kind of just goes, this kind of just shows like how crazy some of these people are. And of course, this person might not speak for everyone who is a Korean feminist or also everyone in the 4B movement in Korea. However, now they're accusing them changing the Chinese character on the Wikipedia page to a different Chinese character than the B Chinese character. And someone is trying to suggest that China created the 4B movement. I guess China has something that's 6B4T, which was influenced by 4B. The concept of 4B emerged in 20. Yeah, okay. I don't know what is 6B4T. 6B4T. Originating in South Korea and propagating into Chinese social media discourse, the 6B4T movement represents a significant departure from traditional feminist approaches, advocating for a comprehensive rejection. Okay, we got that. Not getting married. Okay, these are this is 6B4T. Gosh. We as a species are screwed, aren't we? Not getting married, not having romantic relationships, not having children, not having sex with men. So those four are the 4B. but they're also including not buying misogynistic products. What is a misogynistic product? And offering to help other single women. What does that even mean? Offering to help other single women. The 4 T's refers to rejecting strict beauty standards, which are not implemented by men. Hypersexual depictions of women in Japanese otaku culture. Religion, and idol culture. The 6B, which is kind of most of the idol fans are women, so the 6B 4T movement is a significant departure from traditional feminist approaches. We talked about that. Gained popularity among well-educated women on Chinese social media. Okay, so this is something in the same vein. And what is this website? The World Conference on Gender Equality. Look. I don't believe that sexism is a big problem in Korea. Does it exist? Absolutely. Sexism exists everywhere in the world, and it's not a good thing, but these things happen, just like murder exists everywhere in the world. It's not a good thing. Rape exists all around the world. It's not a good thing. Scamming people, stealing is not a good thing, but it exists. Sexism exists in Korea. It's not a good thing. However, it's nowhere near as bad as everyone says. And amplifying it is only fanning the flames of the problem and getting people in the U.S. worked up as Trump has won and them wanting to get on, like bringing South Korea into this. Korea I'm confident in saying this, Korea is predominantly equal amongst the genders. If there was gender discrimination, I would be 100% in support of fighting it. The gender pay gap. If a company was hiring people and it paid the man more than it paid the woman, let's band together, sue the company, or get a law enacted that prevents that from happening. However, they don't have any examples of this. These things don't exist. All they can refer to is the OECD list of, gender wage gap. Show me a company that is paying men more than it's paying women for the sole fact that he's a man and she's a woman, and I will go with you and I will help you sue this company. But these companies don't exist, and there's no real solution. We just keep pointing, we need 4B, the patriarchy, feminism. These are all just boogeymans, just like the war on terror is. Like, this is just a never-ending kind of battle in order to create a boogeyman to kind of hide the true economic issues that the country has and to divide the country to control them more easy. This is very clear. And then people, B4, what's going on in Korea? Like, there's nothing going on in Korea. These, as Raphael and others said, this is all fringe. This is all crazy people. This would be like going on 4chan and quoting some random anonymous person on 4chan and saying that this anonymous person on 4chan speaks for the entire country. It's not true. It's a minority in terms of opinion. And not many women care or even know about the 4B movement. So, with that being said, that is all the time we have for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.